Well, I've got a little rant about this and rant about that. Care to join me?
Let's get ready to rumble! You can't handle the truth.
Hey, this is Pastor Marty from the Afternoon Drive. Make sure you're a subscriber to the channel. Smack the bell, click the word all to get notification of all of my rants. You know, the entire country seems to be caught up in what I call the Dylan Mulvaney madness. Because, you know, he was all about March Madness, that he didn't even know had anything to do with sports. It was just all about having a crazy month. And I have said this and I will keep saying it. Dylan Mulvaney is not transgender. Dylan Mulvaney is not transgender. What he is a narcissist with some serious emotional issues. And he has found a way to become popular, viral, and it's by doing a caricature of a woman. No woman in real life acts like this. The 1960s bouffant hairdos, the big poodle skirts, dresses like the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and talks, and the way he smiles. When he did that Bud Light thing and, love ya, there was something about it that got stuck in my head.
Love ya!
Who did he remind me of? And it literally gnawed at me for days. That reminds me of someone. And then the other day, while I was shaving, literally, I had an epiphany. As I was shaving, it hit me who Dylan Mulvaney was actually channeling. Yes, Dylan Mulvaney is the full-blown female side of Pee Wee Herman. Well, Republicans this week put together a bill, which Joe Biden has already said is dead on arrival, that would basically make it against the law for schools to allow biological males to compete in female sports. And this was about protecting female sports. And what I find amazing is that it is the feminists who really push back on this. When Megan Rapinoe, the lesbian soccer player who refused to meet with President Trump, and, you know, she comes out in her purple hair and, you know, she's standing up for human rights and dignity and yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. You know, she was one of the female athletes that stood up and said, we cannot exclude our transgender sisters. Newsflash, sweet pea, she's not your sister. She might be your brother. And so the idea that the feminists are actually engaged in self-destruction, I find interesting because it's the same with abortion. It's the same with the gun violence. It's all about seeing one thing while in reality something else is going on that you're not paying any attention to. You say, Pastor Marty, where are you going with this? Stick around. As feminists defend the transgender takeover of their own sex, i.e., being a woman. And it is interesting that the people who have made a lifetime commitment out of acquiring equal rights for women now have an awful hard time defining what a woman actually is, and everything that they worked so hard to achieve. Equality and the idea that they too should be given the same full rights and opportunities, they have now basically handed over to a group of men who say, you don't know how to do women, we'll show you how to do woman. And this literally becomes the very thing that will put them back as a second-class citizen. Because they are conceding the age-old adage that they had to fight against, in particular in the 19th and halfway into the 20th century, that it's a man's world. And apparently it is. Because a man can put on a wig, declare himself a woman, and all the feminists just line up and say, yes, welcome. You understand that actually kills, destroys your sex. You get that, right? You understand that.
The official ideology abounds with contradictions even when there is no practical reason for them, Orwell explained in 1984. These contradictions are not accidental. The purpose of this all-encompassing program of psychological warfare is to bewilder the mind of the average citizen. For when the citizen is bombarded with contradictions and lies and lives in what Orwell called that shifting phantasmagoric world in which black may be white tomorrow and yesterday's weather can be changed by decree, he or she eventually ceases to know what to think or even how to think. The distinction between up and down, fact and fiction, truth and falsity, is not only blurred but loses significance. The belief in objective truth disappears, and the average citizen becomes completely dependent on authority figures to feed him ideas, and thus is ready to assent to lies and to believe the most absurd things, so long as those in the political class deem it to be true.
Now take the issue of gun violence. How come nobody wants to talk about, and the only place you can find this information out are in clips of Ted Cruz giving speeches, which the media, including faux pas news, formerly known as Fox News, fraudulent conservative news outlet that just, bounced Dan Bongino to the curb. And they would bounce Tucker, but Tucker is number one, and they do need to have somebody watching their network so they can keep boasting and bragging that they've got better numbers than CNN. But they would love to bounce Tucker, trust me. But they've bounced Bongino. But Tucker, even though he does come through with some really good stuff, when they do snap their fingers, he falls right back in line. He was breaking it open on the January 6th videos, and then all of a sudden, it just stopped. Because somebody signs Tucker's paycheck. That said, you got to go to TikTok to hear clips of Ted Cruz talking about what doesn't get talked about on any of the mainstream media outlets, i.e., you're going to talk about gun violence in this country, in particular young people shooting up one another, the drive-bys, the black-on-black crime, the young people going into schools, the just out-of-control violence in our big cities. What about the government taking truckloads of illegal guns into these cities and just letting them loose? And Ted Cruz has been presenting the evidence of that. And funny thing is, the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about it. Even faux pas news doesn't want to talk about it. Sean Hannity doesn't want to talk about it. So as all these illegal guns get released into our cities and into the hands of young people, and all of this gun violence happens, two things get accomplished. Number one, the anti-Second Amendment want to disarm us group, they've got their fodder now. And it's only a matter of time before they come for the Second Amendment, because they do want to disarm us, because a fascist authoritarian government cannot have an armed citizenry. So they do want to disarm us. That's number one. Number two, it does something else, much like abortion. It gets rid of the minorities. Because by and large, where do these illegal weapons end up? In minority neighborhoods. And what do the minorities who receive them do with them? They kill one another. So it gives the liberals and the democratic socialists, it gives them this fake, and you talk about sinisterly evil, fake position of talking about we are for the minorities, and it is the Republicans who hate them and want to put them in chains and yada, 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 yada. And while they say all that, behind the scenes, they're the ones making sure get these guns in the hands of the word that we're not allowed to repeat. And let them kill each other. And trust me, the liberal elites, and they are Caucasian, I promise you, the liberal elites are salivating over this. Because again, they want to disarm the mass population, but it eliminates the human weeds. Isn't that right, Margaret Sanger? Recently, I was coming out of a store here in Ohio, and two young men of color approached me about signing a petition for an amendment that's being proposed in the state of Ohio regarding what they call the protection of women's reproductive rights. Now, when you really get into this amendment, what it does is it strips parents of all of their rights. So if your 15-year-old daughter is pregnant and tells her school guidance counselor about it, the guidance counselor can take her for an abortion without ever including mom and dad in the conversation. Funny, a school nurse can literally lose their license if they give your child a Tylenol without parental consent. But now they can take your child for major surgery and you can't do jack squat about it. That's what's in this amendment. But also what's in this amendment is if your young person is struggling with their gender identity and they spill that to a school guidance counselor or counselor, they can take your child to a psychiatrist, to a psychologist, even begin gender reassignment through medication and surgery. And again, parents are left out because we are protecting the rights of transgender children. Again, this is all about stripping parental control, number one. Number two, it is about decreasing the population. Democide, look it up. But when you stop and think about the big picture here, and as I said to these young men of color as they asked me to sign this petition, I said, can I ask you guys a question? Why are you out here advocating for a bill? Of course, they think really all they're doing is protecting quote-unquote abortion. I said, why are you wanting to protect a bill that was originally designed to eliminate you? And they kind of looked at each other, and one guy goes, oh, come on. I said, no, wait. It was originally designed to eliminate you. I said, Margaret Sanger, look her up. He took his iPhone out, went right onto Google, and punched in Margaret Sanger. I said, founder of Planned Parenthood, strong advocate for quote-unquote family planning and the legalization at that time of abortion, the termination of pregnancy. And why did she want that done? So that single girls going to college weren't burdened. Single would-be failed actresses like Alyssa Milano could, kill 3 of her children so that she could have her acting career. I said, no, look it up. Margaret Sanger was into what's called eugenics. She wanted the purification of the races. She wanted to eliminate what she referred to as human weeds, i.e., blacks and minorities. Because according to Charles Darwin, you guys are not fully evolved. And these guys are just looking at each other and they're looking at me. But the one guy, he's still looking this up on his iPhone. And all of a sudden I watched his eyes just get big and he went, holy sheep. And that's not what he said. I said, guys, think about this. Why are 7 out of every 10 abortion clinics in this country in minority neighborhoods? See, abortion is all about 2 things. Number 1, decreasing the population. Yes, overall, the globalists need a controllable size of population to exert their authoritarianism over. But number 2, get rid of the undesirables. Get rid of the black race. Get rid of all of it. You now have Democrats like Cory Booker. He is putting through a bill right now. Couldn't support the protecting of female sports, but he and the Democrats are trying to push through a bill that would make it illegal for our border officers to detain anyone at the border that fits into what they call the Dignity of Detained Immigrants Act. And in this Dignity of Detained Immigrants Act, they want to just allow through what they call, quote, vulnerable persons. And here's their definition of vulnerable person. Someone who is gay, lesbian, transgender, or doesn't speak English. Wait, what? So anybody who's gay, lesbian, trans, or no habla inglés, come on in. Now, the Democrats propose this by and large because this is how they want to increase their voter base, especially when they get around to making it legal for illegals to vote. And yes, they're going to do that. Because that Constitution, that means nothing. That is toilet paper. When AOC and Pelosi galore, Nancy Botox Pelosi, when Democrats start talking about the rule of law, democracy, the Constitution, just know this, that they are using those as buzzwords, not convictions, and they literally hate the Constitution because the Constitution gets in the way of every fascist idea of control that they want to enact. From censorship to stripping you of your rights to say and to speak, and stripping away things that work like fossil fuels, etc., etc., etc. So goodbye, Constitution. Where in the Constitution does it say about vulnerable people and just letting them in? So anybody who goes to the border now and says, I'm gay, come on in. I'm trans, come on in. I don't speak English at all, man. Come on in. And that's about increasing their voter base, but also we understand about the crime that's coming. And again, you don't think the people that traffic kids, the people that come here and have nefarious things that they want to do, and like terrorists, won't line up at that border claiming to be a vulnerable person to come on in? And what does that accomplish? Number 2, decreasing the population with wanton murder and violence. See how it all works together? But hey, you're not going to get this on the mainstream media. You won't even get this on faux pas news. But sadly, you'll get it on TikTok from Ted Cruz.